Okay, we can continue.
Okay, are there any written communications?
There are no written communications received by the deadline.
Great, let's move on to item 2, old business. First subject is the public safety forum.
All right, so I'll stop sharing the screen here so we can see the group. But as you know, we had the Public Safety Forum on October 17th, just last month. We had the new design of the forum this year was more of a fireside chat after a keynote presentation from our Assistant Fire Chief, Brian Glass. We had 2 of our commissioners were present, and then Commissioner Doss joined us a little bit late. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Evans, you weren't available for that day, but I think we had approximately 35 attendees in the public, most of which were all block leaders. And we made this meeting a annual block, one of our quarterly block leader meetings. The fireside chat had the 3 of us on the panel, as well as Lieutenant Jones, Jeremy Jones from the Sheriff's Office, and again, Assistant Chief Brian Glass joined us. At this point, I'd like to hear from you, the commission, what you thought about the event itself, what you would like to see in the future, as well as I'll hear from my partners here on the panel on what you guys thought about the change of the format, but also what you thought about the event overall. So if you don't mind, the commission first.
I thought it was, disappointed in the attendance. I thought we would have a lot more block leaders in attendance, given that it was a quarterly meeting. So I don't know what we could do to get their participation up, because in the past, we actually had, if I remember the last time we had one, we had quite a few more people in attendance that came. Is there any way we can get some feedback from market about why attendance might have been low?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, with the exception of 2022 Public Safety Forum, our attendance was actually on par with many of the prior years, including 2023, but also pre-pandemic. The attendance was pretty much on par. It could be the time of day, 6 p.m. on a weeknight is a little bit tough for our commissioners, right? Anyone rushing home from work at other places could find it difficult. This year, we actually provided a meal, the sandwiches, grab and go sandwiches, rather than a sit down meal. But prior to pandemic, we used to have catered dinners at this event, which of course our financial situation doesn't quite allow us to continue that process again. But our attendance really was on par, with the exception of 2022. And I would attribute that mostly to that. I was looking over at the fire marshal at the time, thinking, don't mind our capacity here, because that was a very full event. But I think it was, again, attributed more towards a willingness, interest to come back from the pandemic, come in person. It was the first time we made it a block leader meeting. It was really the first opportunity the city got together. So I think that could be more of an anomaly than anything else.
Yeah, it's giving the limited number of sample size I had.
Right. You got 2 years, yeah.
But I really did enjoy the Q&A from the audience that came up, that were there to address some of their concerns. That was good.
Yeah. I thought that like the actual content of all the presentations were like the perfect balance of like in terms of depth, because like it wasn't too like nitty gritty details, but it also wasn't like too high level. So like I think people were able to appreciate like certain statistics and like facts about, especially like even, I know it was the first time I learned about all the different units within the fire units and like responsibilities within the fire department, which I thought was cool. I think maybe one interesting thing, which I kind of realized after the event ended, was that like later that week, like that Saturday, I think on that week, there was like this huge citizen corps drill. So I thought like maybe next year or whenever, like it might also help, just like how there were like those mini presentations from fire, from sheriff. It might also be interesting to have something where like the different branches of like the citizen corps maybe give like a little presentation, because then there's also like a little more room for participation from the public and citizens, because even though they might learn very useful things from the fire and sheriff presentations and things to take home, share to their neighbors, like in terms of actual things that they can do or act on, maybe it might help to show them like, hey, like there are ways to actually participate in the system as a member of, cares or search or stuff like that. So I think that might be an interesting avenue.
Yeah, I know, thank you again for your participation in the follow-up exercise on the Saturday, the 19th.
Right.
I was pleasantly surprised or pleased to see your name come across, in the transmission, so thank you. I want to solicit these opportunities to get more participation from the community. I know during the actual fireside chat component, there was a moment where a resident wanted to ask a question in the moment. And we sort of had a flow of things that was already designed. And questions were submitted in advance so that we could get some pre-established questions off the top. But to have more of a true engagement, so more of a conversation directly with the community might be the next phase. And of course, an avenue for their participation and being a part of the system rather than just watching the system act is always in priority for the Citizen Core program.
Yeah, getting more Zoom participation from the block leaders might be a good objective for next time.
Yeah, we didn't broadcast the public safety forum mostly because of staff time, and that needs a whole, today's example, I couldn't remember to unmute. We need more people to run Zoom. If we were taking public comment from the viewers online, it would be even more complicated, but it's possible we would need to dedicate more staff and have, obviously our city managers, support for that. I know you weren't.
Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't attend, but I did watch some of the replay on YouTube. I haven't finished it yet, but yeah, I'll echo what some of these guys said. I do think the content was good, and having a conversational format was really great because it makes it more human.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just a presentation of slides, which is good, but having it conversational helps break up the format of the flow, I think, which is nice. But I also agree that having it more interactive might help. And I hadn't attended or watched previous years, so I'm not sure how the format changed or how attendance changed, but
Yeah,
there's some way to bring people in that might help, draw people in, and also venue and the time, if you could do like outdoors on Saturday morning or something like that, maybe that would be more inviting for people, just as an idea.
Yeah. And previous years, it was pretty much forgive me, but a PowerPoint drone. That, we had a lot of interesting content. My initiative has always been about technology, how we can improve public safety using technology. Chief last year did the text to 911 program, and captain and one of the deputies talked about potential drone use for the.
Started that already, but
Yeah, which is launched, the actual program is launched, but at the time it was a proposed program. So we tried to look at what the future of public safety is in Cupertino and Santa Clara County. But this year we tried to be more the conversation, soliciting questions in advance, and having the professionals on the stage to answer questions. And then we did get great questions follow up, which we were able to be a little bit more dynamic. And we're hoping to continue something like that. But time change, day of the week change is always a question. How we can best support that. And we're talking about the public safety fair, the traditional booth type environment, where people can come around, learn about different disciplines, and receive resources immediately in the future, in the springtime. And that will likely be on a weekend at a different time. We can assess.
There's definitely no perfect time, right? It'll work.
We're gonna miss somebody, yeah.
Your point about the being interrupted with a question, I think it was right not to take that because it's easy, really easy to go off the rails, right? With that kind of thing, people want to take it in their own direction. So I think
Yeah,
it makes
if we
sense
had-
to just, like divide out the Q and A. I think that's smart.
Right, if we had more public attendees, I might have cut off the regular scripted conversation a little sooner to allow for more questions, but because we were a little bit sparse on the attendees, went our full, almost our full length that we could have gone in a conversation. I'll turn it to our panelists. Any feedback that you guys have for the public safety forum?
Could have had one of those like Amish fireplaces or
Yeah.
maybe.
The fire marshal might have a problem with that.
Oh, not electric.
Oh,
Yeah, electric.
In Scouts, we do have artificial campfires.
There you go, see, we could.
Yes.
Jeez.
Since we're good to have.
Times have changed.
Yes.
If it's spark arrested with, attended by, competent adults, water source nearby, the scouts will always be good. So,
I thought it went well. I think it was a good format, a good layout. I did appreciate the fact to give us some time to answer questions. I know sometimes we get to the point where towards the end of the day and our crowd starts dwindling down a little bit. And so we start missing some people that want to ask questions. And so it was good. I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was a good opportunity. I think the human component of actually not being behind a podium and speaking at a crowd was nice. I thought that was definitely a move in the right direction as far as being able to kind of create some true engagement. I did enjoy that. I think having more than one panelist for law enforcement and fire, and we're like everyone else. Everybody specializes. So, the 27 that I've been in has been very different than Chief Glass. Chief Glass is an expert in so many different things that I have spent no time doing. So with that, I think you get a much more comprehensive and diverse response from us in general. I think that was something that is always nice to also have a person kind of take it a little bit further. And then maybe even spark some interest when it comes to the community. So I think that from that aspect of it, I did enjoy the panel format, and I did enjoy having another person from our agency there that could speak to things with expertise in some areas and then just come up with different things. So I thought it was good. I did enjoy it. And I wouldn't say that previously I did not. I would just, I believe this was a good move. I would support going in the same direction, and it's actually good to be out there.
Yeah, I will note that separation of the public safety fair component, because the prior years it was both the fair and the presentations, really alleviated some of our staff load, especially in we're understaffed at the moment. There's a lot of, our financial situation in the city is not the greatest position we've been in the past. So it was a lot more manageable function this year. I too appreciated the opportunity to actually have a conversation with these gentlemen and hear about some of the specific answers that they could provide. And all the questions that we received from the community were answered effectively. Some of the responses answered multiple questions at the same time, but we could have gone on for an hour on almost every one of those questions. We could have detailed out so much more, but the conversation allowed allowed us to keep moving in a way that kept, I think, it more dynamic than a drone on again. So
My comment about attendance was only because I thought the content was so good.
yeah,
I was a little disappointed that more people in the community couldn't share it. Couldn't witness and participate. So
Well-
I thought it was great.
yeah, the opportunity that's Commissioner Evans is going through right now, as he said, the ability to view it online on our YouTube channel is still going to be there, and it's posted on the commission's website.
Okay.
For all the public safety forums, and the associated videos are posted on the website. So that you can see the work that is associated with the Public Safety Commission there as well.
Anything else? No. Then I guess, can we have a motion to receive the updated report from Manager Jim?
All right. Motion to receive updated report on the. public
I'll
safety
second
forum.
to make it different.
Yeah, for the record, that would be Vice Chair Rajram motioning to receive the updated report on the public safety forum and Chair Toda seconding. Roll call vote. Commissioner Das, Commissioner Evans. Yes. Vice Chair Rajram
Yes.
and Chair Toda.
Yes.
Motion passes with 3 ayes and 1 absent.
So next is new business, and our subject is Talk Save Lives presentation by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. So, let's get our slides up. Okay, so thank you again. My name is Yvonne Murray, and I am a volunteer with AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Suicide, it's a complicated topic. A lot of people don't talk about very often. And we really want to bring it out in the open because the best way we can prevent suicide is by talking about it openly and recognizing that it is not a taboo subject. So I will say it can be sensitive and sometimes people can have a hard time with the content. So if you have a hard time with the content, feel free to step out, step back in as you need to, and always we invite people to take care of themselves. So go on to the next slide. Suicide is a health issue. And that's what's important about it because it's complicated and the reasons that people start to have suicide ideation, it's really no different than you might not realize that I would have an issue going on with my heart or with, something else. It is a health issue and that's why we want to bring light to it. So go to the next slide. And the really important thing is that if we learn the warning signs that I may be at increased risk because of stress or things going on, the warning signs for someone that I know, we can take action and prevention is possible. Prevention can start at any time, whether it's like far in advance when we're taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally, or when we're in the midst of a crisis. When we're in the midst of a crisis, time can be really critical. And what they've found time and time again is that allowing a person's suicide risk to subside actually helps them get through periods of stress. So the big point here is that suicide can often be prevented, but we need to know how to take action in order to take it. So go ahead. And how we talk about suicide matters. So we're going to get into some details about how to talk about it. Next slide. Because suicide is a topic that we haven't talked about as a culture and society very often, it's important to learn how we talk about it so that it can be more accessible. And we tend to avoid saying things like committed suicide because it's very judgmental. And instead, we like to talk about it as someone died by suicide, someone ended their lives, someone killed themselves. When we're talking about suicide attempts, again, not to be judgmental, and it's tricky. We don't want to talk about failed or successful attempts because it's actually what we would prefer is an attempt that doesn't result in death. So failed and successful are really tricky in those regards. That's why we talk about it's a suicide attempt or someone died by suicide. So that just starts to normalize and give people language to start to talk about this difficult subject. Go ahead. So let's talk really briefly about the scope of the problem and we can go on and give some statistics. So over 800,000 people die by suicide each year. Don't know the specific statistics in Cupertino. You may have access to it. I know that information can be tricky for the average citizen to find. Go on. And this translates into someone dies by suicide every 40 seconds, which is kind of like, wow. Slide. And suicide is one of the leading causes of death, and it depends on the age group in terms of, there's all kinds of statistics around this, but mostly what we're saying is it's an important thing to start to talk about. Next slide. And here's the thing that I think is really important, is that for each one of those suicides, there are at least 25 other attempts. And this is a tricky statistic because a lot of people may not be reporting suicide attempts. So it's a big issue, right? Which is why you all have us here tonight, which I appreciate. And so let's talk a little bit about what prevention looks like. Slide. The good news is that there are protective factors that can help when someone is either in experiencing a lot of extra stress, when they're experiencing a lot of anxiety, when they have issues, they maybe have issues with substance abuse, things like that. So there are protective factors that can counteract some of the things that can be issues that would make people more at risk of suicide. One of the protective factors is mental health care, which is a lot of people, just like people not wanting to talk about suicide, many people are embarrassed or don't want to address mental health the way they address their physical health. And it's really important to continue to normalize in our communities getting mental health and addressing issues when they come up. Problem solving skills are one of those factors that can be protective. It's just like we hear a lot about how we can become resilient as a community or resilient in terms of individuals when things happen. And if you have developed a solid set of problem solving skills when something happens that is less than ideal, maybe sucks, if you have a solid set of problem solving skills, that can help shield you from taking extreme action. Cultural and religious beliefs can also help support someone when they are struggling, as well as family and community support. And one of the things that we see is when someone is struggling, if they have family and community support, if they know that someone cares about them, it helps them through those difficult times. So these are some of the protective factors that help with prevention. So let's go to the next slide. And so because mental health care is a really important ingredient for suicide, preventing suicide, we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a bit. But the important thing is that we need a culture where everyone knows to be smart about their mental health in the same ways that we've learned to be smart about our cardiovascular health. If we talk about, I don't know, back in the day when my dad was growing up, they weren't talking about cardiovascular health the same way we just know about that today. And so it's just as important now to talk about mental health. Next slide. So how are we proactive about mental health? It's making mental health a priority. Just like if I have, if I sprain my ankle or I break my leg, I'm going to go in and see a doctor to get taken care of. When we're having issues that we are maybe there's something going on from a mental health perspective, we really encourage people getting the help they need, getting an evaluation, discussing treatment options, right? And the really important thing is that it's finding the mental health solutions that work for the individual, because I have a number of family members who have mental health issues, and each person has a different my daughter, when she was a teenager, she had some mental health issues that she needed help with. She was not comfortable in a one-on-one therapy session with an adult, right? But what we found for her was a group therapy session where there were a number of different kids kind of in her age range and an adult, and it felt much more accessible for her. The point is that each individual is going to have a different way of finding accessibility, and each individual is going to relate to different people from a mental health perspective. So what's important is to try something. If it doesn't work, try something else and find what works for each individual. The next slide. And the good news as well is that the law now requires insurance plans to cover mental health services the way they cover physical health services. So that's great for our community. Go on. And then there are a number of self-care practices in addition to mental health that can help strengthen our mental health. Exercise, getting enough sleep, which is like, again, so important. We know so well our teenagers when they're in high school and their junior year of high school is always pretty tricky because you got so many AP classes you're trying to take. And when you don't have enough sleep, it's much harder to cope every day, right? Getting a healthy diet, learning the stress management tools that work for each individual. All of that self-care strengthens your mental health and is preventative. One. So the most important thing you can put between a suicidal person and a way of ending their life is time. And so that's the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is like very critically important, because what we found is that, and it's very counterintuitive, but you know, if someone is having thoughts of suicide and they have a plan for how they're going to do it, like for example, if they're going to go up and jump off of the Golden Gate Bridge, well, they go up there and there is a barrier that keeps them from being able to jump off the bridge, instead of going and finding another method, they're just going to go, they're going to do something else. This is time and time again. If you put something in place that keeps people from going with the method that they were thinking of, they won't just go and find another method. So let's go on to the next slide, which is why limiting access to means is one of the best ways of presenting suicide. You can go on. So we're going to have some specific examples here. So here are some ways that as a society, we've started limiting access to means. CO2 sensors in cars, so that when you're in the garage, and the garage door is closed, the car can turn off. Blister packs for medication. So if you have a whole bottle of a medication and you can just pour it all in your hands and take it, just with a blister pack instead, just the time it takes to pop out individual pills stops people from taking overdoses in the same ways. As I talked about before, barriers on bridges have reduced it's fascinating because it reduces both the number of people who jump off the bridge, but it also has been found to reduce the number of attempts that happen in the greater community, which is, I don't think there's any logical explanation for it, but it has been shown to make a difference. And one of the things that I personally am very passionate about is safely storing firearms and securing firearms, because one of the things that people are often very surprised to find out about is that 50% of deaths by suicide in this country are due to firearms, even though they are by far not the most common method that people use to attempt suicide, because suicidal death when a firearm is involved happens 85% of attempts, whereas all other methods are like 15% of attempts result in a death. And so no one who is a firearm owner wants to have their firearm used for the death of someone that they know. And no one, when they're not struggling, no one wants to have their firearm used for their own death. And so securing firearms, both so other people can't get them, and securing firearms when someone is at risk for themselves, is really important. So then the next question is, what can you do? And this is more from the perspective of when you're concerned about someone else, right? And the most important thing that you can do is have a conversation with someone. And we're going to talk in more detail about how you have that conversation. So you can go on. It's important when you're having that conversation to know the warning signs that someone may be at risk of thinking about suicide, then it's really important to reach out and talk to that person because um, and I see this a lot on Facebook and other social media where people say, oh, if you're struggling, reach out to me, right? In the moments where people are struggling, often they are not in a space where they have the energy or ability to reach out. And so it's really important for us to be able to reach out to someone when we're concerned about them. And then seek help for them, seek help for ourselves. So let's go on and we'll talk in more detail about the warning signs that someone is at risk of suicide is that you see a difference in the way they're talking about things. And so they start to talk about life isn't worth living, or that they're just very down and they're very concerned about things. And a lot of the time, you also can see the time when all of a sudden they've been very down and upset about things, and all of a sudden their mood has shifted and they start to be happy about things. And so what we're looking for in this is changes in the way they're talking about things, changes in their behavior, also changes in their mood. So you can go on. So in terms of the way they could be talking about ending their lives. They could be just talking about, oh, it's just hard. I don't really see that I have a reason to live. They could talk about being a burden to others. They can talk about being trapped. Also, it's concerning if they're talking about a lot of unbearable pain. So I think it's important to listen and be aware of yourself and where you hear from someone things that are going in a direction you start to be concerned. Next slide. And also in terms of behaviors, you can see increased use of alcohol or drugs, issues with sleep. In some instances, you can see someone who they're just wanting to sleep all the time. Ironically, you can also see someone who is now having a lot of insomnia and being very restless and not sleeping very much at all. If they're acting very recklessly, and this is all what we're looking at is changes in the norm, changes in the way they're normally behaving, right? If they've been fairly active and they're suddenly withdrawing from the activities that they normally are doing, if they're isolating themselves from family and friends. Certainly if they're looking for a way to kill themselves, I don't know how often we actually hear about that, but that would be a big warning sign. And also if they're starting to give away their possessions, those are all cues that they may be having a lot of suicide ideation. If they're feeling if you're seeing a lot of depression or apathy, it could also be a lot of rage or irritability. And impulsivity, and these are all things that you're looking for things that are a change. So, my son is 17-year-olds are very impulsive. So if I'm just looking at impulsivity, I'm not going to be worried about him, right? But if I'm seeing signs of apathy or irritability, or for him, if I'm seeing signs of anxiety, I'm going to start to get more concerned, especially if it's a change from what I normally see. So this is all about noticing changes in behavior patterns and things that are not normal for the person you're talking about. And then this is where it gets really, really important, is to trust your instinct. Because if you're starting to feel like something's off, probably something is off, and it may or may not be that they're starting to have thoughts of suicide, but something is going on with them, right? And it's also really important to assume that you're the only person that's going to reach out, because we've all heard stories about, oh, we all thought that somebody else was going to do it and nobody stepped in. So it's really important when you're concerned about someone to just reach out, to let them know you're concerned. And then we want to talk about how you go about doing that. So hopefully this is obvious, but maybe not. it's really important that it's a private conversation, right? It's not like, and it's a private conversation when you have the time to have that conversation. It's not like, oh, I got 5 minutes, let's talk about this really quick. So we need to give them the time and give yourself the time to figure out how to step into it. And it's really important to listen to their story. Even if it's hard, it's not a time to judge their story. If they're saying, gosh, this is really hard right now. It's not the time to like cheerlead and tell them all the reasons that it's not hard right now. It's really, they need to hear that you are actually fully there and present and listening to their story and express concern and caring for them. And it can be really important. This is where, you know, read the room, so to speak, with the person you're talking to. But it can be really okay to ask directly about suicidal thoughts, because there are a lot of people who think, oh, if I ask about that, that's going to put that thought into their mind. It doesn't. So the statistics and the research shows that that having that conversation really and say, hey, I'm concerned, I've seen this. Are you thinking about suicide? If they're not thinking about suicide, it's not going to put that in their mind. If they are thinking about suicide already, they may or may not tell you that directly because it's hard to say, but it's important to let them know that you care. And then depending on how the conversation goes, encourage them to think about and look into mental health services. Now, there's a whole different level that we go to if when we reach out and talk to them, we realize that they are at high risk immediately. So we'll go on. So as I said, avoid minimizing their feelings, avoid trying to convince them that life is worth living, and avoid advice to fix it, because they're not in a moment where they can hear any of those things. They need to be in the space they are until they're ready to move on. So if you think they might make an attempt soon, and this is if they're saying, yeah, I've thought about it, and here's the plan for what I would do, stay with them. Don't leave them alone. Now, if they are in a place that is dangerous to you, you do need to leave them because you need to be safe. So if they're like standing in the middle of a roadway, you have to first make sure that you're safe. Help them secure or remove the lethal means. And perhaps you think about escorting them to mental health services, depending on how at risk they are. So you can go on. And then what's really important is the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 988. And also a lot of people, particularly people in their, like teenagers, people in their 20s, often prefer to text the crisis line instead of calling and talking to 988. 988, you will get someone who starts to talk to you. There are moments when it's important to dial 911 in a crisis situation, but a lot of times, I'm sure you've all heard of these situations where people who are already feeling anxious or stressed out in other ways may not receive a knock on the door from a police officer in the way it is intended in those instances, and things can escalate. So often the 988 Suicide Prevention Lifeline has ways of handling that can diffuse the situation. But for emergencies, yes, dial 911. You know, if and this is not what he would do, but if he were on my roof and, you know, threatening to jump, I would likely need to dial 911 as opposed to just leave him on the roof, right? And in situations where it would be unsafe for you to be with that person directly, also dial 9. And then these are two codes to see the city of Cupertino mental health resources and information, which you all may already have, and the Cupertino Union School District. So I'm gonna pause it now and ask if like you have any questions or want to go further into anything?
Yeah, I guess I had one question, like, which I guess kind of this QR code might have given the answer. I was wondering like whether you've given this presentation to like students at the local high schools and stuff.
So we have a different version of this presentation that is targeted more towards high school and middle school students. As well as there's another organization called Sandy Hook Promise that has a similar type of program that is targeted specifically to middle school and high school students. And they also have, and I don't know if they're working with the Cupertino schools, but I know they're working with the schools in Sequoia Union High School District. So, for example, my son goes to Menlo Atherton, and they have a way you can anonymously report when you're worried that someone is at risk. Because all of those things are factors that are really important in terms of keeping our kids safe. Yeah. But AFSP would certainly have, if there was interest, would certainly have a version of our program that would go well into high schools, if you were interested.
A couple of years ago at our public safety forum, we had the director of Santa Clara Behavioral Sciences give this presentation, and he was telling us about the 988, and we were actually shocked, or I was, that there were 10,000 a month.
Yeah.
In Santa Clara County.
Is there more to the presentation?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will take the opportunity to echo that, as the chair mentioned, that we did invite the Santa Clara County Behavioral Health Department to the 2022 Public Safety Forum, where we had a 35-minute presentation from their team, including 988 as a highlight. It was just rolling out that year, but also a highlight of the mobile crisis teams that the county of Santa Clara provides through their behavioral health department. Take the opportunity to tout the sheriff's office and their HERT team, the psychiatric emergency response team, that someone in immediate crisis can receive both the security of a law enforcement officer, but the presence of a clinician that can help work through issues with someone that is in a immediate crisis as well. So there's a lot of resources here. The QR code that's on the presentation, I will note that it's not activated for use.
Oh,
So you'll have to,
okay.
recording will get posted. So if you activate
I
it,
will make sure we get that activated. Yes. Yes.
people that are doing it at a later date might be able to see it and use it. So please activate that same
Yes.
code. But we'll be able to redistribute the city's mental health services site. That includes both 988 and direct resources to Santa Clara County Public Health Department, Behavioral Health Department, as well as the QR code and link to the Cupertino Union School District.
Being further up the peninsula, of course, there's a lot of incidents happening with Gun High School and Palo Alto High School students. In fact, I lost one of my frat brothers, same location in Menlo, decided to jump in front of a Caltrain. Notice that has diminished a lot. What preventative things are they doing there?
You know, that's an example that I find fascinating because what they did is it started with individual parents just going out and sitting at the train crossings, right? And because there was a person there, if someone, I mean, you don't know, but if someone came, they left, right? And so then they've since then raised funds to hire people to sit at those train crossings because the presence of a person causes the person who is having the suicidal ideation to leave and not take action, which is, yeah.
We only have one train that comes once a month and it goes really slow.
Oh, in Cupertino, yeah.
And probably it means nobody knows what for sure when that train's coming, so they're, yeah.
Well, I would just like to, can I have a moment?
Sure, at this point, we can turn it to public comment on this item. And though you're not officially a presenter, we'll give you an opportunity to speak through the chair, of course. Chair Toda, if you allow
Yes,
public
please.
commenter, introduce yourself. You don't have.
So, thank you for allowing the presentation to be part of your meeting tonight. My name is Karen Pandula. And I'm with the Silicon Valley Alliance for Gun Safety, as is Yvonne. And, we have worked with Santa Clara County Behavioral Health and partnered with them to, they wanted to create websites that would raise awareness about safe storage of firearms, because within the county, there's, the majority of suicides, as Yvonne was saying, are as a result of a firearm. And so if people can have that, just the moment where they have to go and unlock their firearm, that's often enough, right, to give them a second thought where they won't do that, or prevent their child, God forbid, from getting the firearm. And one surprising thing that I learned from working with them is that within our county, demographic that is, that has the highest proportion of suicide by firearm is white older males. And it's because of some feelings of, when they're not valued in the community anymore, maybe after they retire or they have health issues, and that leads to depression. So I think it's something that we're trying to raise awareness within the cities, because it's something that's not talked about. That happens within somebody's family. They're not often going to talk about it. So there's this perception that there's not a lot of gun violence necessarily, let's say in Cupertino or other cities, but in fact, there is. It's done quietly, except for. So, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So if there's no other comments, or yes, we could move to receive the presentation.
Yeah, motion to receive a presentation on Talk Saves Lives.
Second.
Thank you. For the record, that is Commissioner Evans motioning to receive the presentation on Flex Lives by American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and Vice Chair Rajaram seconding for a roll call vote. Commissioner Dobbs, Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rajaram,
Yes.
Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes with 3 ayes and 1 absent. Thank you very much. You're free to stay if you'd like, or go for the rest of our presentation. And I
Just take my little.
You're born here.
Here.
Get the transition time.
Look forward to working with you all. Okay.
And it's fun to be back in Cupertino. All my kids went to Monte Vista. So.
Yay, matadors.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So item 4, staff and commission reports. Epic report by the Santa County Fire District. Thank you, Deputy Chief State.
Good evening. Very efficient, thank you. Once again, it was great to be part of the forum. Looking forward to doing it again. So as I kind of roll into this, a lot of the the information that we have here, very similar, so. Things that are more highlights. That. For as you know, one of the things that, as stated over the last few months, we're definitely back to normal. When it comes down to call volumes and basically we're actually exceeding what we had in 2019, pre-pandemic numbers. See that for us, usually seeing somewhere around 300 or so calls a month instead of just general average. Still tracking exactly the same way. Except it's like with September, the EMS call number went up just a little bit. Usually it's in the 60s. For note, the types of things that are happening, typically you'll see as the weather starts to change. That might be a result of, say, the more the respiratory things that are going around, some of those types of that's that type of thing, than having more than one. So it's EMS is track out. Another thing that you'll see in the next month is fire alarms. That was as a normal trend, what you'll see with weather, especially as it starts to rain, systems that have been out of use will at that point they'll trigger more often. It just happens to be one of those things that comes with weather. So you may see a little bit of a trend there. And then traffic accidents will be there as well as we start falling, as we enter the fall and now start going into the winter, those types of things. So that time change and a few other things, they all just kind of track together to create those incidents of more EMS, more fire alarm type calls, systems. And then as a reminder, we have engines 71, 72, and 77. Those rigs are the ones that are actually in Cupertino. So those will be the ones that are looking at the response time averages. Once again, over 4-minute, 5-minute time frames are actually really good for us, and see the frequency of calls that are coming in. Our busiest station, not too far from us on Stevens Street, or yes, is 93 responses for the month. And then those local jurisdictions that are close, or those areas that are close by, coming in. So that isn't 100% of their call volume. It's just those that are in Cupertino that they're coming over to help out. Dollar loss number, not too high. A total of 2 calls came up to $3,000. Basically, what you had there was a vehicle fire. That was actually in the narrative. It wasn't really on fire. What happened is looked like fire impingement. Doesn't seem like there was a story for it. It just was one of those things that was noticed afterwards, and it was investigated, but there was no active fire when they got there. So a little bit unusual, but it was just minor damage to the exterior of the vehicle. And then also we had a couple of things that happened near the end of the month that were unusual. Every once in a while, we'll get what looked like a string of fires. So that $1,000 remainder is basically 2 events that were linked, and there were bus stops where somebody had ignited something near a garbage can. So they both look the same. They're with the same time frame, and they're basically clustered as the same event. But no active fire. It was something that went out that we went to that had minimal fire or fire loss or fire damage. One of the things for you to know about some of these numbers is that typically we will do property loss if there's a fire. A lot of like if there's a vehicle accident, we don't do a property loss number. So those are going to usually be your fire alarms, fire calls. If there's water damage or something like that, you might get an estimated amount. So that would be those. So it would be definitely a subset of the things that were going on. So there is movement. Property damage could possibly be claimed on an insurance form or a claim, but that's essentially the number that we're looking at. As you see, the community education trending up into the 8 programs, you'll see that it has a little bit higher. So those are more groups. So as you're coming out of you got your winter and your fall festivals, things like that. And you'll see that we move into October is our fire prevention month. So we're starting to ramp up in public education. October?
Just sorry to interrupt, but one note, do you want to talk about the ABL?
Oh, so the dispatch is the layman's term. So basically the AVL system went online. So that means that if a unit is close, so it actually even works to the point where if you have two bays in the same station, the one that's actually closer to the physical address will get, and those are some of the things that they're working through, or they work through all the different details so that the fine tuning is. You're getting basically the closest rig to the actual event is the one that's gonna go. So that means if anybody's traveling to, say, the training center, and they just have to come by and going through an area, they will get their call. So response times, as in a general observation, you may not see this huge tick, but you may see the difference in seconds. But for an individual event, there could be a significant decrease in the response time that you're experiencing. So thank you, Tom. That is a big deal. And it's really the effort of quite a long time trying to get the CAD systems updated and a few other things in place. And then there was a lot of logistical things that had to take place. But you're a deal as well.
Yes, we are, yeah. Have a little bit of problem sometimes with our phones because we log in as administrators. Sometimes they might dispatch us, so we have to be careful about.
Go online as well.
We go on to take a look and then get off of it, so.
It's actually, it's great to see how, as we started, it was funny to see the company officers trying to second guess the system and every once in a while, they might be right here and there, but for the most part, they're not. The system knows, pretty much where everyone is, and actually, they know exactly where everyone is, and they know who can get there, and they do track to, they take into account traffic and a bunch of other, variables that exist that, really kind of go to provide the best response time possible. And then the October report will include a couple of other, so the false alarm number on this actually went up a little bit.
Sorry.
No, I did it. It was my fault. I jumped the gun because I was excited about being right about something. So the number of fire alarm is what I was writing down the table through the right officer. So you see the fire alarm, then that anytime there was a rain or something like that, you see that number kind of pop up. So I think this month in the next report, we'll probably see more service calls. We'll see more types of things like that. So and those are usually code 2 calls that are not really code 3 calls. Significant events for October totaled about $10,000. 2 structure fires. The first was an exterior building. It was a small shed and a fence. So minimal damage, but it really wasn't that big of a structure. So essentially it was limited to that small outbuilding and a fence. And that was estimated at about $6,500 and then $3,000 for a 4-plex. It turned out to be what was essentially what we call a cooking error. So pot on the stove that did not extend beyond the stove area or the range top. So what they do is they'll go in, they'll take a look, they'll look at the hoods with our thermal imaging camera, just make sure there's no extension at the attic spaces to the basically up to the attic or to the roof. And that point there's always property damage that's associated with it because of the flame, things melt. So that's why you have a modest property loss on that. Then also another garbage can fire. Suspicious conditions. There was just happened to be an outside fire here. And I would say that everything else seems just about on track with our incident count by year. We still continue to trend up. We call number of calls, so we're getting to a number, so we'll probably be, I think we were gonna surpass last year. It'll probably be in November. But I think that with that, I will add one thing. I had an opportunity to participate in Operation State of Life. It's an ongoing program from Get Up, Depot, and April. Every year we get a pretty large volume of smoke alarms. They're meant for the community, anybody that may need one. So typically we would go out to a call. We notice a chirp going on in the background, and then as a secondary service, what we would do, essentially go and provide one or even install it for people. I would say that for this group, we always try to be as proactive about getting them out to the community, to the people that need them. But I would say that for this group in particular, there might be an opportunity for us to distribute some for the citizens in Cupertino that may be in need. So if there's a chance we'd love to offer those, because since they come through our prevention office, I hate to see them on the pallets. If you say, if you have any ideas or you'd like to do something, I'm very happy to go ahead and help support any efforts that you might have. And with that, I will conclude my presentation, and then any questions?
So like those. But ballots, you mean like there's just like a bunch just sitting at the various stations, like ready to be.
Yeah, so probably, geez, it's been at least, as long as I can remember, probably about the last 15 years potentially. So we literally get, I think we got like 3 pallets of smoke detectors. 5 feet tall, and there are a lot of them. So what we do is we'll distribute it to different stations. And as they go out on events, we have them provide those to the community, or if anybody comes up to or to a station, we encourage them to do that. And I think that probably it would probably we're going to try to also make them available at events, on public education events or community events. I think it's an important way to get those things out there. But yeah, they've been very generous in terms of providing those for us. You know, I think since they are a perishable commodity, they at the end of the usually 10-year lifespan, some much less, but basically they're those things that we want to keep at the top of people's minds. And one of the special pieces of information, the focus message this year from us was understanding and knowing what the chirp pattern was. So with us, a lot of these will have an out now, so that you can actually read and connect with yours. But knowing that this particular model, having that information at your disposal, if it's 4 chirps, that's a CO2, or if there's a single chirp, you know, what is it? Is it your battery? And because they all have a very specific pattern, so knowing that in advance was one of the things that we talked about a little bit yesterday when we were on camera. So we'd like to basically push that out to the community as well. It's a little bit of pre-fun, knowing what it's saying and not having to question it. And then the CO2 protocol, we'd be calling 911 when we come out, use a monitor to make tests. And also we effectively do exactly the same thing that any community member could do. And that is find the instructions for that particular model online, read the chirps, understand what it's telling us.
So that chirp pattern is standardized in the industry of smoke detector? Does it depend on the make and manufacture?
It's dependent. It was much more different, or was much more diverse in the past. I think they're starting.
I think they would want us to be.
For example, I think that the 4 chirps is one for CO now that
Okay.
is pretty standard. So I'd say the complete answer to your question is, I'm not 100% sure. But I know that they're starting to come together, and I know that they used to be very different.
Yeah, I don't know what it is in my house, so I'll have to go.
With all of it was decades ago, they had speak and spell toys. You'd think they could have a simple little chip that's a CO2.
We have the technology.
I heard,
The technology
I heard,
be that much more expensive.
I recently heard the last beta of it 10 years ago. Yeah, it was something. But anyway, yeah, so understanding that chirp was things I think for us to start evolving, and everybody has an idea. They know that when the time changes, check your batteries. You know, try to make a very clear call to action. Go ahead and check them. If you haven't checked, and to know what they're saying, or to be able to interpret the message that they're delivering is super important.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
No other questions? Can I hear a motion to receive the report from Santa Clara County Fire?
Yes, motion to receive the report by Santa Clara County Fire District.
Second.
For the record, that is Commissioner Evans motioning to receive the report by the Santa Clara County Fire District, and Vice Chair Rajaram seconding for a roll call vote. Commissioner Doss, Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rosharon,
Yes.
Chair Toda.
Yes.
Motion carries 3 ayes and 1 absent.
Now let's have 36 talk about or? Report by the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office and Valenzuela.
All right, good evening. Get the report up here. First thing I want to address is some of the response times. We are within our target time for response times, but I am, my frustration is a little bit sometimes with county communications with some of these calls, because we had 2, for example, in September. And in one of them, it was, a 9-minute response time, over a 9-minute response time on one of the calls. And it was a mom who woke up and the 17-year-old wasn't home. She called and they called it an at-risk call because he was a minor. When we got there, the kid showed up. He was at McDonald's grabbing some food. But so sometimes, the calls come out as a mom woke up missing 17-year-old, but as the questions keep coming up, county comm will reclassify these things as priority ones and priority, and which makes us get there faster. In fact, I pulled out all the priority 1 calls from September and October, and the ones we missed our target response times were those calls where they came out as not necessarily urgent, like Target loss prevention had a 6-year-old that they were with at Target, and for some reason that came out as an at-risk kid missing. When we got there, we located mom and reunited them together again. So, but it's one of those things where we have to maybe address it with my deputies. And if you just hear a missing person, if the person's a juvenile, you have to get there within 5 minutes, because county comm is classifying these things as priority 1 calls. So that's where I'm noticing September and October, we had about, I think 3 in October missing, considered at risk, and then 2 in September that were missing at risk that did not appear on face value, again, to be urgent matters. But needless to say, neither one of them ended up in a terrible situation. So, but we're still there within our time frame. We just a little bit over. So, but maybe something we have to fix on our end. So that's where we're at right now with our calls and our target response times. And we'll go down to the call types that we've been having. First thing I did want to address is the robberies. We did have an increase in October, and there were a few of these Asian Indian chain grabs, which we are trying to draft a sort of a message that we can provide to the community, because it was only about 3 or 4 that were considered that, but still, it's not just occurring in our area, and they are occurring in Sunnyvale and in other places as well too. We have during community meetings advised people of Asian Indian descent not to walk around with a lot of gold jewelry. I know it's sometimes tradition for them to do that, but right now as you can see just from the high number, there are people that are targeting Asian Indian men and women that are showing a lot of gold jewelry. So that's what we may draft a message here. We're trying to get us some information, maybe suspect vehicles or other things we can push out to the community, but we'll get with that. As you can see, everything else is pretty much, we had a lot of calls, a lot of grand theft calls, a lot of, vehicle burglaries. I do want to talk about, maybe not necessarily this week, but I mean, this time, but in November, early November, we did have, a couple of car break-ins and our deputies responded. We ended up giving chase with 3 individuals. We just got notification, district attorney filed 20 counts of auto burglary on all 3 individuals. So lots and lots of auto burglaries that our detectives did a great job of compiling those together against the 3 individuals, but you might see a big number in November because we did have a string. However, we did apprehend 3 and have 20 pending charges against individuals. So keep on going down. We'll just
Just want to interrupt on that one, because Captain was, let me know that incident in particular occurred, and this is again November, but so you won't see the data represented, but it's an opportunity to acknowledge the incredible work that our deputies are doing. And this case didn't just stay in a small geographic area in Cupertino. forgive me if I'm expanding a little bit beyond, but it extended into other jurisdictions because of the proactivity of the deputies' work. And then resulted in multiple shifts and a lot of deputies then and other agencies involved because of the enormity that we came across. So when the captain mentions that the district attorney is gonna actually file charges, and in that number, that's because of the size that the deputies have been able to, effectively disengage from in the environment here. So I just want to take the opportunity to acknowledge not only the captain's leadership, but the deputies, and their proactivity in our city. We have an incredible public safety, team from the fire department to the sheriff's office, but the people, and I think you mentioned it, Commissioner Evans during the, public safety forum item, that you made it more human. These are the humans behind it, right? These are leaders here represent the organizations and the people behind it, the humans behind it. So I want to acknowledge their work. Thank you.
This year, we didn't have the 4th of July. I really enjoyed them in the past because you get a chance to meet with all of the officers there. So
It's a, you know, as much as I love the 4th of July event, everything, for me, it is a grueling day in front of a barbecue, because I do have to buy about 20 tri-tips over, I don't know how many hundreds of burgers and everything, but yes. Yes, we did, yeah. It's always a rough day for me on the 4th of July. I don't know how we got stuck with the having to feed barbecue for everybody, but I think it's a tradition that one captain started a long time
It's an
ago.
honor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, anyways, but yes, absolutely. I love seeing a lot of times we see the deputies come out there. They're not necessarily deputies that are assigned to Cupertino. But you hear a lot of deputies that when they come out there and they get engaged with the community, they come back up to me and say, I want to come work in Cupertino, just because of the support that we get from members of the community. So there is a lot of that, and I do appreciate that, especially with people who are still, you know, in the training process or in the court system or other divisions, and they interact with members of the public here, and they say, absolutely, I want to come work in Cupertino, just because of the support we get from the community. So sorry about that. Just to keep going back on the report, I want to just strike right there. So you'll see the questions, if you have any questions about any specific crimes or anything that we have going on in town, the numbers are pretty much similar to, the previous months and stuff like that. So, and if we go down to page 4, we'll kind of wrap up with the, because this just kind of breaks down with patrol units and traffic units, and this is more of a combined number here. You can see the moving violations for September, October. We are doing a lot more targeted enforcement regarding crosswalks and pedestrian safety. So we are focusing a lot. Sometimes I'll forward the reports to Tom of the number of citations we issued in a staying operation, but our traffic units are dedicating a lot more time into focusing on pedestrian safety. Other numbers on there, as you can see, they're just other citations, speeding citations, and accidents with injuries. And then down below, you'll see that accidents with either property damage only, and go down just a little bit more. And I believe the other one is accidents DUI. So those are the numbers right there. Just giving you a total number here with this bar graph of accidents that we've handled within the city. We did have one traffic accident, obviously in Foothill. Our detective is still in the process with that whole case. The district attorney is asking for a lot because it's a possibility that they may charge the individual with murder versus vehicular homicide or vehicular manslaughter. So there's a lot more work that our detectives need to be doing on stuff like that when we do prosecute for somebody with not just vehicular manslaughter. So
Can you clarify that, when that case, that incident occurred?
oh, boy.
It's not within the general timeframe that we're talking about.
No, I believe it was like in April or April or May. We had this accident, very tragic accident, for our first responders who arrived on scene. However, there are now evidence that our detectives are uncovering, which may kind of sway the case into more of a homicide or a murder case versus just a vehicular manslaughter case. So still kind of working on that. And when I do get some more information, whether the district attorney files prosecution on that, then I'll provide more information on that. So always working hard around the clock, our traffic detectives and our traffic team and all of our deputies. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, but yeah, that's my report for you guys.
A question about the chain grabs. I saw some posts on Nextdoor about that, and they made it sound like it wasn't like an aggressive, violent theft, but more like kind of some trickery involved. Is that?
Yeah,
Well,
some of them,
version I'll talk.
yeah, some of them are actually considered grand theft because there was actually no force or fear used. They've been using a lot of tricks like swapping it out or
Right, ask you to hold something.
yes, and it's more of a theft from a person versus a robbery. But once if a victim becomes aware of what's going on and the struggle ensues, then it's classified as a robbery at that point in time. And there were 2 or 3 of those that made that threshold where the person didn't want to, have to hold the chain or look at something. It's almost like a ruse that they're using.
Right.
So we are trying, that's why I want to make sure that we draft our message correctly and look at the last couple cases. But yeah, there have been a few happening here and in Sunnyvale and other areas where they're targeting our Asian Indian population walking around with a lot of gold jewelry. But yes, you're right. There's like a trick or something that they're using. So
Yeah.
any other questions?
Yeah, one of the traffic related stats, like a high level question, I noticed that I think it was speeding violation, like 2023 and 2024, so like half of like what 2022 was. I was just curious, like what you attribute that to.
The during and after COVID-ish times, some of our deputies and traffic deputies, we're still using radar and a lot of the equipment has improved with us. We have LiDARs now that we are issued. And so a little bit easier to use, a little bit more intuitive, a little more accurate when it comes to speeding citations. Speeding citations are contested a lot in court and, so, the traffic guys are always usually the ones who give them, but they're really hard to issue sometimes, especially if you don't have an accurate traffic survey. And that's sometimes the problems when we get with the cities, if their traffic survey is expired or not current, we really can't give out speeding tickets. A traffic survey has to be up to date in order for a police officer to issue a speeding ticket. And so sometimes those things take time, they lapse. I believe they're done every 2 years. I have to ask the traffic, city's traffic team that does that, but they have to conduct surveys in order to, and the city can also elect to disregard a traffic survey and change and keep a speed limit sign at a certain rate, for example. So I'll give you an example of that is a residential street, right? You can do a traffic survey and let's just say the traffic survey says, hey, the people speed down this road. So the 85% median needs to be 45 miles an hour. The city's not going to post a 45 mile an hour speed limit sign on a residential roadway. It's okay to keep it at 25 miles an hour. But what it essentially does is we can't issue a speeding ticket because the traffic survey recommended a different speed limit sign than what is actually posted. And that happens a lot just because we don't want to put a 45 mile an hour road sign on certain residential streets. That's completely understandable. So
Does that mean if there's an officer on a 25 mile an hour street and someone zooms by at 45 and you measure them, does that mean you can't?
we can always enforce a vehicle stop. However, if we go to court and we find out that the traffic survey recommended 30, 35 mile an hour down that road, we could lose that citation, just the judge is not gonna convict.
Even though it's posted at 25. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's
Weird.
it's a part of the traffic, conundrum sometimes, or, where cities kind of like to put roads, speed limit signs on roads to keep things safe. But realistically, traffic survey may recommend a higher number because the majority of the people that travel down that road travel at this rate, for example.
I noticed that they're moving the speed limit all the way down on McClellan down to 25.
Yeah.
I think Bob also, right, there's like a.
I can understand bus, but McClellan is a long stretch, without schools on the side toward D'Anza. So I was kind of surprised to see it all the way down.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the traffic survey, but it could be that that's the medium traveling speed down, especially with the bike lanes now and stuff like that, Yeah. Yes.
Keeps the cities from going rogue, I guess, and posting extremely low speed limits. So that people aren't gonna follow it. It's interesting to know the dynamics behind all that.
Yes, yeah.
Anything else, Jen? Then did I hear a motion to receive the report from the sheriff's department?
Yeah, motion to receive the report by Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the record, that is Vice Chair Rajaram motion to receive the report by the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office and Chair Toda seconding or roll call vote. That's Commissioner Dodd. Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rajaram
Yes.
and Chair Toda.
Yes,
Motion passes with 3 ayes and 1 absent.
great. And now, item 6, report by the city of Cupertino OEM.
That's right. That's gonna be me again. This time around, I have a very short and sweet verbal presentation for you. As a result of our last meeting in September, you, as a commission, recommended that we not only adopt the multi-jurisdictional housing mitigation plan the council adopt the multi-jurisdictional housing mitigation plan, but also the ALPR program, the automated license plate reader program. I'm happy to report back to you that in the subsequent meeting of the council on October 1st, we received unanimous approval for both. Multi-jurisdictional housing mitigation plan went on consent, and then the ALPR program was passed again after action. So we are in contract currently with the vendor that was identified and selected through other jurisdictional solicitations, but also the only available vendor through the County of Santa Clara for use for ALPR, and that's Flock Safety. We will be installing up to 15 cameras throughout the city, as you know, focusing on the external entry points or the entry points to the city and major thoroughfares. I expect those cameras to be installed sometime in January because of some permitting and processes, so forth. But that's a pretty quick turnaround in terms of installation. The sheriff's office will have to go to the board and receive approval to actually use the frankly, surveillance tools as according to the surveillance policy at the county level. So that date, I don't think has been determined yet when it's gonna go to the board, right?
Everything just wrapped up, everything's been looked at by our county council. I think we're shooting sometime in December.
Oh, December, perfect. So hopefully by the time we're actually installed, the cameras can immediately be used. There won't be any lag time. And our contract and our payment services start as soon as they're installed. So we'll be tracking that and being able to report hopefully some success stories and some data associated with the Flock system. For the Office of Emergency Management directly, we also presented to the council for unhoused task force, so homelessness in Cupertino on October 15th. Council gave us direction to continue with our current process and our partnership, of course, with the sheriff's office, fire department when needed for medical and consultation. But our unhoused task force is mostly made up of city agencies and our nonprofits and our coordinated effort to serve those that are unhoused on our streets. We have the presentation included some some of our pit count times, our point in time counts, excuse me. And showing a decrease in point in time numbers since 2019, where we were started at 159 unhoused residents in Cupertino, or unhoused people in Cupertino, down to 48 in 2023. There will be a new point in time count that we're partnering with the County of Santa Clara. This is going to be the first, there will be a new point in time count in 2025, end of January 2025. This is the first year, to my knowledge, that the local jurisdiction has been actually invited to participate. So with our knowledge of our city, knowing where unhoused individuals are likely to congregate at a certain time of day, we will be able to help direct the count. It is my opinion that we will likely see an increase this year. Due to a number of factors, but in my personal and professional opinion is that it's because we will know more where they're likely to be rather than from the outside. There's other factors that we can discuss and potential impacts from the decisions from the Supreme Court over the summer to actions by other jurisdictions, but there are other action influences we can discuss at another time. We will be issuing an RFP coming in the coming weeks for renewal of our emergency operations plan. It is due for renewal this year, based upon standard recommendation by the California Office of Emergency Services at 5 years. Current plan was approved in June 2019. We are due for that renewal now. So we are a little bit behind on that. However, we're going to get an RFP out to get some consultation help, get that process in place. I hope to have a more comprehensive EOP than we've had in the past, something that we can actually rely on a day-to-day basis, let alone a catastrophic emergency. That's hopefully going to put us in a better position for the coming year. Again, as I said, it was going to be short and sweet. I don't have fancy data reports that our partners here have, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I am.
Oh, yeah, I guess kind of like a random.
Sure.
I think like past election, there were like all these there were a couple of ballot measures, like one of them was related to, I think, allocating a bunch of funding for fire safety and that kind of thing. I wonder, like, has there been any like analysis done to see how that might distill down or not yet?
Are you referring to a specific proposition,
Yeah.
statewide proposition?
Yeah, I forget the exact one. Maybe it was like Prop 4 or something. It was like a couple billion for like wildfire.
Tell you, we did not see a couple billion here, but
No, I think it was statewide.
Sure.
Yeah. I was just curious whether like we know how that'll affect.
We can do some research on that. It's not on our agenda.
Sure,
And again, without the actual proposition and a prepared
Right.
answer.
Yeah.
We'll have to give you some follow-up to that.
That one passed, do you remember?
I think that one passed, yeah, the wildfire support.
Generally speaking, most fire-related propositions and measures pass.
Most people want that.
It's a big problem. Continuous commitment.
It's kind of, to me, it's weird. Maybe we're getting off topic here, but to me, it's a little weird that we were voting on that, like issuing bonds. It seems like the legislature should allocate these funds, and it's like, why is it up to the general public? That's a
Offline.
Well, we'll talk offline,
No,
right?
we will talk.
We can provide reports or summaries of what locally we are doing with any statewide resources, but I know that the system is large, right? So a lot of public safety agencies need assistance, ours included. We certainly have initiatives that we want to do. It's a matter of how we can go about implementing them the most effective way and the most efficient way possible.
It's related to water.
Well, we'll have to, again, find the specific proposition that
Right.
you're
Yeah.
referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we ready to receive the report from the Office of Emergency Management?
Yes, motion to receive the report by the Cupertino Office of Emergency Management.
Yeah, second.
For the record, that's Commissioner Evans motioning to receive the report by the City of Cupertino Office of Emergency Management and Vice Chair Roger, I'm seconding. For a roll call vote, Commissioner Doss. Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roger,
Yes.
and Chair Toto.
Yes.
Motion passes with 3 ayes and 1 absent. You can bring up the agenda again if you'd like, but. That is the night. Commissioner Reports, Chair.
Okay, I attended the October 1st meeting with OEM Manager Chin, and we proposed that we had the recommended a recommendation to have the ALPR and the multi-jurisdictional reports. And as OEM Manager Chin said, it passed, but no, without a lot of questions. One comment was somebody didn't understand what the multi-jurisdictional report was and made a comment that she, that was, probably not correct. But the other meeting I went to was the commissioners meeting with the mayor. And we had our agenda items that we talked about, the ALPR and the multi-jurisdictional, and the fact that we're going to do the public safety fair as a separate event next March. During that meeting, there is an online Word doc of all of the topics that each commission is discussing with the mayor. Do you guys see that at all?
No,
I didn't know.
Is there a way, is it appropriate to share that after the meeting?
I'll have to check back.
Okay.
about that. There might be some brownout issues. You
Okay,
guys are communicating outside of it.
but if it is a city thing that passes from you,
It's possible. I have
Okay.
to check and
Okay.
verify. Yeah,
because there was a lot of, all of the other commissions presented what their action items are, or what areas that they're discussing and recommending. So, it'd be great if I've been taking notes, but I didn't know how appropriate it was for me to pass that along to my fellow commissioners.
anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple items. I'll report that on October 7th, we had a block leader event for, I'm on Bollinger Road and Vine. Or rather, I'm on Defoe Drive. We combined with the Bollinger Road block leaders, and we had a emergency kit building event. So Marta came out and hosted that for some of the neighbors, and it was a good opportunity to some of the city representatives and some of our neighbors get together for that was also our annual block leader event for the neighborhoods. So that was a good success.
Great.
How many people should?
Maybe 15 or 20 people. So it's a pretty good turnout. Yeah. And then I guess on a personal note, I'll use my soapbox in this position, just to talk about how, public safety events impacted me over the last couple months. My wife was in a car accident when someone didn't turn into her car. It was actually technically in San Jose. There's a portion of San Jose that kind of juts into Cupertino, De Anza, yeah, South De Anza. So it's technically not in Cupertino. No injuries, thankfully, but it was just a minor traffic event. On a more serious note, a good friend of mine, this was in Santa Clara, not in Cupertino, but he was struck by a car on his bicycle a few weeks ago, still in serious condition. So that's been, really brought some of these issues to the top of my mind. I'm thinking about traffic safety, bicycle safety, and all these things. So, I know you guys are doing a lot. You talked about the moving violation enforcement. I think it's a lot going on out there. but these things just keep it top of my mind to be alert while we're driving. There's a lot of distracted drivers and people just in a hurry making bad decisions. And yeah, I think we all need to stay vigilant out there. So that's what I have.
Great. If I may, Chair, I'd like to thank you, Commissioner Evans, for hosting your block leader event. For those of you that aren't block leaders already, we do ask that block leaders hold at least one community event. And it can be as large as an official block party, where it's permitted and the streets shut down and the city provides barricades, and so forth, and insurance for the street portion. Or it can be, sort of as small as a sort of coffee shop gathering or a gathering in your yard and just meeting with your neighbors. And then somewhere in the middle is what Commissioner Evans is talking about is a build a kit event. And we, as the city, will come out to your neighborhood, to any block leader, and help and bring supplies where effectively it is an assembly line of building your own kit. And we estimate the value of the kit that we provided roughly around $50 total. Including break glass tools or ponchos, emergency blankets, sometimes glow sticks and other materials that we're providing, and a bag itself. So we have this program available to all block leaders, and we encourage members of the community to join and become an official block leader. If you don't have a block leader in your neighborhood, reach out to us at OEM@cupertino.gov. And we will connect you with a block leader or encourage you to become one. So we want more block leaders. There isn't a maximum number of block leaders on your block. We want to encourage you to become one, and we have a lot of opportunities to as a block leader and to your neighbors as well. So, and thank you, Commissioner Evans, for doing your part, not only as a commissioner, but then as a block leader.
Yeah, I think the two roles support each other, and thank you for that event. It was actually, I didn't talk about it much, but it was it's a great event. You know, everyone goes home with a kit which has really useful items should they be needed, and we actually had someone come out and show us how to shut off our gas and things like that.
Yeah, and that was Ken Erickson. He's actually our Citizen Corps coordinator, so he's one of our staff. And he's incredible. You guys, you do a Citizen Corps.
Yep.
Yeah, you know him well.
Dealt with him for over decades.
Yeah, and he's incredibly knowledgeable. He's also a resident of Cupertino.
And his wife makes the best cookies.
I'd have to leave you to judge that. I have not had the pleasure, but yeah, it's the community is free. So I do want to note it is a starter kit. So I wouldn't necessarily claim this
Not
one
as good as
event.
our cert kits.
You're right. It wouldn't necessarily make you completely prepared for everything, but it's designed to help you get started. And we want to provide that service as here's something to start with. The bag is big enough for more. So if you have especially personal items to become more prepared, you'll need that for that kit. So once again, thank you, Commissioner Evans. So thank you for your part.
19?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Yeah, very encouraging. October 19th, we had like the big Citizen Corps drill. I think all parts of Citizen Corps participated in some way. I was part of CARES, so I think we basically surveyed all of Cupertino's like roadways. Like they divided up the city, and then teams would go around and survey different areas, use the quick capture, take photos, pass messages, and then all the meanwhile CERT was doing their own thing. I think near Creekside Park, they had their field station.
Triage.
Yeah, they had their setup there, and they were going through that. And yeah, I thought it was great. Like, I think it was probably like in terms of raw, like volume of messages that were sent and transacted, I think it's like one of the biggest exercises that CARES has done, or Citizen Corps has done in a while. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a conflict, so I couldn't make it, but yeah, I heard it was really, really good.
Yeah, things were really smooth, and like there were multiple people trading off as net control and stuff. So it was cool to see like everybody pitching in, people who haven't done it before, take part in their first exercise of the year, which is nice. So, yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I'll just respond to the Vice Chair that, while I suppose I could have had a presentation about that today. I'm waiting for the after action process to complete in order to really provide you a more thorough presentation on it. But it was the first comprehensive citizen core exercise that we've had in, at least in the 4.5 years that I've been here, and likely pre-pandemic. So, to have all three elements of citizen core, which is our, amateur radio cares, MRC, Medical Reserve Corps, and CERT. So all the graduates from the Santa Clara County CERT program that are residents of Cupertino become enrolled in or could become enrolled in our Citizen Corps CERT program. This is the first comprehensive exercise. And as Vice Chair described, it started with a launch at 7 a.m. with a simulated earthquake. We broadcasted it over the Great Cupertino radio 1670. In true exercise format, right? And activated the Citizen Corps. Amateur radio cares team started launching with immediate mic reports, which is modified Mercalli scale, a scale used by the USGS to measure perceived shaking of an earthquake, of a seismic event. And generally speaking, modified Mercalli, anything above a 5 or 6 is when people start feeling it and damage starts occurring. So that's when generally we'll start to activate additional supportive emergency services. Field responders will obviously know and have the windshield survey processes already built into your organizations, but the Citizen Corps utilize both amateur radio reporting over the air, and the terminology that Vice Chair is using, net control and things like that are a part of the functionality of the CARES program. And then quick captures are internal app-based windshield survey tool. So again, a little bit, this is certainly not on our agenda, but I want to thank you, Vice Chair, for participating in our exercise. That was some good. I was happy to see your name come across. And once again, thank you for your dedication to our community as well.
Super.
I'm sorry for one final thing on Saturday. This coming Saturday, so the 16th of November, we'll have the Crest and Community Service Awards for Cupertino, and that'll honor our Crest nominees, but also our commissioners, or both our sitting commissioners and our past commissioners. So the three members of our commission, 4 members of our commission that have vacated over the last year, allowing for the 3 new commissioners to join us, but past commissioners as well. You'll be honored and thanked on Saturday for your service. So hopefully you're all coming. Yeah, perfect. I didn't get to see the last registration list, so I was nervous that you guys wouldn't come get celebrated. So thank you again. I'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So anything we need to discuss about future agenda topics?
The future agenda item is where we are able to, commissioners, you are able to oppose future agenda items. It'll be up to staff and the chair to determine when we post those items or actually give those items. We have generally some pretty set items in January and March that have to occur, but they could come up in the future. You could also here at this point ask for specific reports from one of our partner agencies so that they have time to present those and prepare those, especially if they're data heavy. We can have them in the next few months.
Would it be appropriate to ask about getting updates about the public safety fair?
We could pose a presentation in advance for that, yeah. Good, public safety fair.
We could find out what's happening is
Not too much description.
Yes. It's going to be, we have a coordinator that's going to be coordinating for us. And it is a separate standalone area. So I think the date proposed was March 22nd.
Right, so again, we haven't confirmed that date.
Yes.
So that's why we shouldn't be,
proposed.
we shouldn't be discussing too much more about this, but there will be, we're working on a fair component for the spring.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay. That's my only item. Future agenda.
I don't have any agenda items right now.
If you have a proposed future agenda, item that may be proposed so that we can see about getting it on.
You can always reach back out to me at another time, so it's,
Okay.
Yeah.
doesn't have to be done right at this moment.
Okay. So without any other items, I guess we're ready for adjournment.
And meeting officially adjourned at 7:00